art is supposed to be messy. Art is supposed to make you feel complex, weird things and cathartic and work through them in this wonderful medium where you are provided context to explore the hard issues of the day without it having to be the personal things that happen to you. If you take the creativity out of storytelling, you're going to be left with unsatisfying, generic rehashes of what's already been.
My guest today is a Blacklist screenwriter, playwright, actor, producer. And most recently, he executive produced the acclaimed documentary about the life and legacy of his father, novelist Norman Mailer. Buffalo, I'm so excited to have you on Underexposed, but I do have to start with an apology. I know that we would both prefer to be having this conversation in a dimly lit studio, perhaps reminiscent of the Dick Cavett show, with a smoldering ashtray between us. Alas, that is not going to happen today, but it could happen in the future because hopefully this is the first of many conversations. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's an honor to be here, Alex. Thank you.
Do you remember your first instinct toward art and what form it took?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, as a little kid, I one of the first films I remember seeing was My Dinner with Andre. And that made me want to not make movies because it was so boring.
How
And
old were you when you saw My Dinner with Andre?
probably like five, somewhere around there, six. And I was just like, this is movies? This doesn't make any sense at all. What are these people talking about? And then I saw The Gods Must Be Crazy, and it was like night and day. At this point, a little known movie, but a little gem. And suddenly it was fun. But I would say probably Oliver Stone had a very big impact on me through Wall Street and Platoon, because with those two movies, I understood the stock market crash and the corruption on Wall Street, and I understood what Vietnam meant in a visceral way. And that's when I think I started to say, oh, this is a good medium to get into some difficult matter. And growing up in my family, we all completely threw the ball around, so to speak, right? To not be an artist would have been shocking if any of us came home to my parents and said, "Great news, I want to be a doctor." They'd be like, "Where did we go wrong? What happened?" Um, so it was kind of there. I think when I was about 16, 17, that's when I got very lucky with a few different writing teachers and started putting out these short stories that my dad took an interest in and actually was, brutal on the editing. But the fact that he was taking the time kind of told me all I needed to know about the possibility of doing this. I published my first novella when I was 21 called Hello Herman in a periodical called The Reading Room. And that ended up, I adapted that into a play um, because I had started a theater company with a few friends from Wesleyan after we graduated called Backhouse Productions. And we got very lucky when my colleague Neil Stewart and I saw the final performance of Lin-Manuel Miranda's college production of In the Heights. And Neil and I were seniors. Thomas Kail and Anthony Viziali, our two other partners, who have gone on to do great things, had already graduated. We went up to Lynn right afterwards and said, "We want to option your play and develop this with our theater company." And Lynn was a sophomore in college. So he was like, "Great." My movie, Hello Herman, sorry, got turned into a movie by Michelle Danner, I think in 2012, that came out. And then I followed up with a love story called Blind with Alec Baldwin and Demi Moore and Dylan McDermott, who's amazing.
Amazing.
And
I want to pause there. Can we pause there and talk a little bit about Blind? Because I saw it last week. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought everybody did a great job. Tell us about writing that story, where it came from and its evolution.
wild socialite named Diane Fisher, who was married to Ivan Fisher, the kind of infamous defense attorney for the mafia and, tough, strong, bad people, very powerful, fascinating guy. And I'd known them since I was kids growing up. She came to me with this beautiful story about how she had been volunteering at the Lighthouse for the Blind. And this blind man that she read to fell madly in love with her and wrote her this long 5-page love letter. I said, "Oh, Diane, this is incredible. It's beautiful. What did you do?" She said, "Well, I cut off all contact with him immediately. It was completely inappropriate." I was like, so what's the movie
Yeah.
exactly? And she said, the movie is What If I Hadn't?
What
You
if I
know,
hadn't? Right.
Diane had some connection to Mike Nichols and had his address and told me that she was going to send the script to him in a fruit basket. And I said, Diane, please don't send a script with my name on it, unsolicited in a fruit basket to Mike Nichols, please. Like that's not a good look. And I can't even believe that you're contemplating this. And she, as she often did, completely ignored my suggestions and went for it. And at the time, my second play, which was called Crazy Eyes, that we later made into a movie titled American Terrorist, directed by Charles Cobleson. For the play, it was having its world premiere in Athens, Greece, and it was done in Greek. So literally, the first time I'm seeing a full realization of this play, it is all Greek to me. And it was a fascinating, weird experience. But I'm also like going broke at the time, missing like the last payment from a project or two, which, as you know, is always that hardest money to to get in. And I get an email from Mike Nichols, and he says, "Dear John Buffalo, a strange thing has happened. I received an unsolicited script, and I actually read it." And I actually think it's quite good. I think it's better than the stuff that CIA is sending and whatnot. I tried to call your number, but it said that it's not in service because I hadn't paid my cell phone bill. And he said, if you can find a phone that works, you should call me. So that kind of started my career, I would say, as a screenwriter, and I had the unbelievable honor of getting to meet with Nichols and get to know him, and he shepherded this and really gave it life.
Let's jump across the lens for a minute and talk about your acting work. I always find it interesting when people that write also act. What have you learned and taken away from acting that you've applied then to your screenwriting?
I feel like whether you're acting or writing or directing or producing, it's all storytelling. And I think what I love about movies more than plays is the sense of the army that comes together, and instead of waging a war, they're making art. But without your PAs, without your gaffers, without every artist that is on and a part of that army, there is no movie. It really suffers. And I always say this, like PAs need to, I was a PA for many years, and uh, PAs are one of the most important soldiers you have on this set, because if you're getting that perfect take and somebody walks through and they didn't do their job and stop them, your take's ruined. Um, after High Times, I really thought, okay, I'm lucky that I'm getting screenwriting work, but I need to make a living, and producing is kind of a great way to pay the bills. I ended up meeting Oliver Stone, actually, like the guy who was influencing me as a kid, through producing. I was doing a short commercial for MoveOn.org called Listen to the Vets. And it was about giving voice to the Iraq war veterans and saying, we need to end this war. And what's kind of wild is the timing of it, because I was doing all right as a screenwriter at this time. As such as screenwriters do, right? If you live in New York, it's hard to pay your bills with just that. And I was developing a project for Jason Blum about Hurricane Katrina. And a friend, actually my former boss, Richard Stratton at High Times, got that treatment to Stone, and Stone wanted to meet with me about it. So simultaneously, this commercial lands in my lap, and they say, "Do you know any directors that might be good for something like Listen to the Vets?" I think I might be meeting one. And we ended up over the course of like 4 days. I went out to LA. I met with Stone as a writer, and it was like manna from heaven. I mean, it was just so cool. And we had, kind of not so great sandwiches in his office, and saying this is. And then we shifted gears into me being his producer, and that was one of the most hellish experiences I've ever had. I thought, I'm gonna lose my mind. Oliver Stone is gonna drive me crazy. Because obviously he has commanded his place in this world to be very specific as to what he wants, and we had very little stuff to work with. But ultimately, I did survive that. He was not completely unhappy with the finished product. He did not want to make the Hurricane Katrina movie because he said, "Who wants to spend that much time on water?" And I thought, well, that I didn't factor that in. Aw.
Aw,
Uh,
cameo.
uh, and so, but th while we were in the edit room, I remember this, specifically because it was kind of one of those moments, and we're going through the cuts, and at a certain point, he looks at me and goes, "Buffalo, you look like Russell Crowe." And I said, "Russell Crowe? Jesus, Oliver, I usually get Jason Priestley. I will take Russell Crowe in a heartbeat." He at the time was doing what was supposed to be his final Vietnam movie, Pinkville. And it was this incredible cast of Michael Pitt, Bruce Willis, and Tom Berenger, and all this other stuff. I was flying back and forth to LA for callbacks as my dad was dying in the
Hmm.
hospital. Really intense, crazy time of like extreme highs and lows. And I booked the part. I booked what was actually like a really great part in this, and it was going to take us to Chiang Mai, Thailand, for like 9 months. And I was able to tell my dad before he died, "Hey, I booked it. This is going," and he was happy. We had his my father's funeral, and then I had to fly to LA the next day to start rehearsals.
Hmm.
It's like a crazy juxtaposition. And I was thinking there's worse ways to get down with one of the biggest losses of your life than being flown first class to LA and put up in a great hotel on Sunset and going into rehearsal, and Tom Berenger's there being like, "I love war movies, man. War movies, sports movies, buddy movies. This thing's gonna be great." I was like, "I'm in Platoon. This is insane." And the Vietnam veteran soldier advisors were like, "You guys are gonna be doing helicopter drops, grenade launches, machine gun fire." I was like, "Wait, so like I get to be a soldier without having to be a soldier?" Like, "That's right, man." I was like, "This is so cool." And this was I guess I flew out on a Tuesday. First rehearsal was Wednesday. Second rehearsal was Thursday. Costume fittings, that's incredible. On Friday, I get my 9 inoculations to go to Chiang Mai. I can like barely lift my arm. I get a call from Stone saying that unfortunately the movie's been postponed indefinitely. And really, and I'll never forget this. Oliver says, "You know, I've had a bad week. You've had a really bad week." And I was like, "Yeah, man, can't wait to see what happens next week." Uh,
Yeah.
but so, suddenly I was like, my acting career had been brought back from the dead, and then the movie was canceled, and my dad was literally dead, and my mom was not well actually at the time. And so in a way, it ended up being a blessing because I would have had to leave the movie about halfway through, and that would have been a disaster that no one would have liked me for it, but it's my mother, and I wouldn't have
Yeah.
when she had to have a major surgery. So after like crying in bed for 3 weeks about what had all happened, I kind of picked it up, and then Oliver did W. That was the next movie that he did, and he kind of threw me a bone, threw me a very sweet part opposite Colin Hanks, who was wonderful, and I got to meet Josh Brolin playing W, and it was great because Josh would like not break character on set. And so he comes in as W, and this is, I don't know, 2008 is when this is going on. So it was very fresh in that time, and that was just an amazing experience. But it was not what Pinkville would have been. And then when he did Wall Street 2, Wall Street Money Never Sleeps, I heard about it, and I called up Stone. I was like, "You don't have a fucking part for a guy from Brooklyn in Wall Street Money Never Sleeps. Are you kidding me?" And I was like, I've got something in mind for you. Why don't you come and have dinner with Shia, me and Shia?" So that was kind of audition one for that. I got to become very close with Shia through the making of that movie. It was not easy to get into because Fox was the studio and they wanted a big star in this kind of substantial role of the best friend to the lead. But Oliver being the gentleman that he is when he wants to be, really fought for me, and so that kind of ended up being the completion of what Pinkville I'd hoped would be, and that put me in back in the game.
Do you find yourself having a preference for one or the other? Do you go through these phases of like just wanting to be a writer or wanting to be a performer?
I think they all kind of have their burdens and blessings. Acting is obviously a lot of fun. Acting in a big movie, there's few things that are as fun. But it's also exhausting, and there's a certain kind of physical requirement, and there's, you have to stay primed and shave every day and do all that, which is not a lot of fun if you are a hirsute like us. And it's amazing at the same time you are that one part, right? So then if you're directing, you can be schlubby and do whatever, and you're responsible for all of it. And if you're the writer, then it's all in your head, and you just keep walking around with people asking you who you are on set. And producing is that kind of mysterious role where when someone says, "What does a producer do?" I say, "Everything." Producer does everything. So each of them is comes with its own version. If you held a gun to my head and said, "Listen, you can only tell stories in one mode. What is it?" I would say screenwriting. That's certainly what I've spent the most time. That's what I feel the most proficient in. And I just love it. I love stories, man. As we've talked about before, just the ability to understand why for 3,000 years we have been telling essentially the same seven stories. It's because our lives follow one of them or another at any given point, and that can give us strength and comfort and guidance when we need it through the journey. So to me, that's like the big addiction is really using writing as a way to understand life.
Yeah, and having observed so much wonderful culture at close range as you have, I wonder if you could comment on the way that things have changed, the way that things have changed since we were kids into this era now, where I think a lot of people are feeling, this is my impression of it anyway, disenchanted with narrative, traditional narratives, those narratives you talk about that we've been telling for 3,000 years. A lot of people are pressing up against them. I think we've lost a little bit of our sophistication as audiences for these stories. And I wonder if you could comment on where you think it's all going and what our roles are, if our roles have changed at all as storytellers in the 21st century.
Yeah, I think we're facing challenges today that we've never faced before. Attention span has been completely obliterated, and on top of that, on one's preferred social media feed, you are the star, right? So now you're telling teenagers that they should take a break from being the star of their own movie, spend money, and take 2 hours away from their phone to watch yours. It's odd how tough a sell it is. I do think that. Um, Probably it's a result of a lack of exposure to long form storytelling because as I was saying before, like a great movie will help make sense of your life. It will help with the choices you make. It's cathartic. It's all these things. There's a certain narcissism to the culture today that is not healthy, I don't think. I don't care what someone had for lunch. I don't care. Like they could be one of my heroes, and I still don't care unless I'm having that lunch with them. But at the same time, what I'm seeing today, and particularly with kind of the younger generation, is a rebellion against this. And I think that the young millennials and Gen Z and whatever is the next, they feel like they've been cheated out of something. They know that there's a certain meaninglessness to all the pictures that they take to this. Like we used to have these hard copies of pictures from moments in time, and you would think about that. Now it's about capturing the image, and then it's just one of 1,000 little pixels on your phone that people forget they were there, right? It's life. We're having so many images crammed into our heads at all times every day that the meaning of the image is starting to go away. But film is a language, right? As Coppola has elucidated very eloquently. And the choices that we make of this image will be followed by this image, will be followed by this image, are thought out and require you to actually pay attention to what you're seeing to get the value out of it. I will say that, since getting to know Olivia Ritigliano and yourself, I am heartened and encouraged and excited because you wonderful people cultivate communities of like-minded souls that actually do want to get away from themselves for a moment and take time to watch a movie or a series or whatever it is, and really enjoy it and pick it apart. So I think that the pros of the time we're living in is, just as like bad people can find like-minded individuals and connect and feel a sense of camaraderie and group, so can cinephiles, and there's a way to do that. I think the other challenge that we're facing, though, with AI and kind of where the industry is going at this moment, Rotten Tomatoes for my money is terrible for culture. I think it's a brilliant business model, and I think that they are, whoever started Rotten Tomatoes was very smart in terms of achieving what they wanted to achieve. But the algorithm through which they either make or kill a movie is off. And it doesn't get into any nuance. It's almost like it's designed to obliterate nuance. Something is either the greatest thing since cream cheese or the worst piece of art that's ever existed in the history of art. And most movies don't fall into one of those two categories. Now we've got programs and algorithms and companies that, as movies are being developed and considered for production, are going through that kind of data mine of robots telling you that if you change this scene or add this character or do that, then you're going to get this demographic, and then the movie is profitable, and so it's profitable at this price point, and you can do that. But that completely takes the magic out of it. That completely takes a studio head reading a script from the blacklist and saying, "This is going to be a great movie, this is going to be something," and believing in it. Like the days of Bob Evans and that kind of notion of a studio head who actually is a cinephile and really cares are gone, with maybe the exception of Sam Pressman, but who's the wildest, kind of most insane successful producer I know. And That's a danger that I think we need to acknowledge and be talking about more, because I know it's efficient for studios, but and it's kind of been going this way for a while of a more robotic sense. But if you take the creativity out of storytelling, you're going to be left with unsatisfying, generic rehashes of what's already been. And I also think at its best, if you assume that this data is accurate, which I don't because they're pulling it from all sorts of crazy places, but assume it is accurate, it's what people wanted 2 years ago. It's not what people want next year. And that's the kind of time frame you got to be looking at when you're making a movie. So a lot of challenges. At the same time, just like booze, we will always need entertainment, because in times of stress, those are the two industries that go up because we have to escape somehow. I'm optimistic about where it's going, and I think that the millennials really were like the test subject that got hit the hardest by all this, and generations that are coming are just more savvy about, A, what they put out, and B, how they spend their time, because that's really what we got, right?
Yeah. And it kind of brings it back to your dad in a way, because he was such an advocate for that kind of existential bravery, it seems to me. How do we carry that spirit on, and how do we adapt it? How do we reintroduce risk?
I mean, it's going to require very bold, brave souls who are willing to risk being canceled to do so. Either canceled from the left or canceled from the right. I mean, we got cancel culture on both sides, right? And I guess it's really an existential question of, do enough people feel like not every moment of life is supposed to be comfortable, and that somebody saying something that triggers you and uh, gets you questioning and asking hard questions and looking at hard questions that don't have simple answers, do we collectively still know that we need that? Because there is no sweet without the sour. And if one is taught or thinks that they can go through life without anyone ever slapping them in the face, whether it be metaphorically or physically, that's not going to be a fulfilling life. And I think that there is a certain dulling, as my dad would say, a dulling of the senses that has gone on, a numbing of passion. Not with your wife, by the way, who's one of the most passionate people in the world, but in general, there is just a sense of fear and people not speaking their minds. And I think that's where we really get into the danger is when you can't control how people are going to feel. Right? You can be honest, and if you offend someone, you can apologize if it was accidental. We need to get back to that place where people understand that the substance is more important than the verbiage. And that if I say something that offends you and it was not my intent, I want to learn. And I'm only going to learn if I make that mistake. I just did a documentary on a Thai family, an incredible Thai family, and the patriarch, Kirat Shah, said, "What is experience but a collection of mistakes?" And we got to be allowed to mess up. It's literally as if we all are meant to be born perfect and never offend anyone, never do anything. That's not sustainable. That's never going to work. And it's certainly not conducive to storytelling. Art is supposed to be messy. Art is supposed to make you feel complex, weird things and cathartic and work through them in this wonderful medium where, you are provided context to explore the hard issues of the day without it having to be the personal things that happen to you. It's a beautiful gift for us to be able to have those uncomfortable pieces of art. We should never be banning books. We should never be banning movies. We shouldn't look at something that was of a time decades ago and say, well, it doesn't meet up to the mores of today, ergo, let's erase it from history. And that's a real danger that we have now as we've gone completely digital. History can be erased. And when that happens, boy, are we in trouble.
You talked earlier about blessings and burdens, which I love. And now having the dad that you have, I'm sure that comes with a lot of blessings and burdens. To what extent do you feel compelled to carry on his legacy? What is that legacy to you? And to what extent do you have your own legacy that you're interested in carrying on? And where is that headed?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't trade parents with anyone in the world. My parents were my best friends, and I've got eight siblings, eight half siblings. My dad was married six times, and summers we would all grow up together, but year round it was really me and one of my brothers who were there and got the benefit of breaking the daily bread and doing that. So I was given a very stable parental base with him. I knew from an early age that it was different. Like strangers would get excited when they would hear my last name, things like that. And slowly I started to put the pieces together and, then became a tremendous fan of his work outside of being his son. Um, the thing is, I've heard this said before, so I don't want to take credit for it, but if you are born into fame as opposed to born rich, particularly if you're born into fame with a writer as a father, you're probably not rich. But you are given a tool that you can use, and it will open doors for you. It will also come with people assuming that that is the only reason you're in the room. So you kind of have to prove more to justify that kind of like being born into the cream that opens that door. Like I understand the anger that people feel when they're like, this person was born on third base. Why do they think they hit a triple? Right.
Mhm.
I get it. And at the same time, and I'm also guilty of it myself at certain times when I see, people that I'm like, why is this person lecturing this room of people right now about this? Like they haven't done jack shit. What is this about? I try to not do that because at the end of the day, you cannot separate from whence you come with who you are. It is as much a part of you as anything else. If you can acknowledge that what you are is the culmination of all of your actions and how you affect other people, that's who you are. So when I've got younger friends who, are born into celebrity families and want to do the batshit crazy thing of go be an artist and follow in those family footsteps, they, encounter this inevitably. I try to tell them that, like, listen, do the work. Just do the work, work your ass off, work harder than the next person. And eventually you will have done enough things that you will not feel there's any kind of inappropriate reason why you are living the life that you're living, right? Everyone's got their advantages and disadvantages. Life is not fair. Use every fucking advantage that you have because the disadvantages are going to come from that famous last name as well. And that's inevitable. If, just ideally do some good with it.